This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in edtech, a spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver a highly effective, customized, and engaging learning experience for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hello, everyone. This is Ladek, and I'm coming to you from OpenLMS today, and I'm here with Shawn. And Shawn, I have to apologize to you that I forgot to put the link to start this whole thing. My process broke down somewhere along the way, and I realized about 3 minutes ago, I was like, oh my gosh, I never gave him the actual link to show up. So thanks for being extemporaneous with me.
Oh, of course. The best laid plans, right? The best laid plans.
But the cool thing is that you know how this works because we're going to be here. We're here to talk about podcasting for productivity in education, something that you talked about recently at DevLearn. And I had a great conversation, and I guess about 6 weeks ago or so, in preparation for this. But before we dive in there, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are. You have like 4 different titles. What's the work that keeps you busy most during the day? That kind of stuff.
Oh man, well, the work that keeps me busy most days is definitely my kids, my wife, and all that. But professionally, I am a senior instructional designer for Office Practicum, pediatrics electronic medical record, based out of Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. Additionally, my wife and I do some contracting on the side, and in and amongst that, a podcasting both professionally and personally, recreationally, let's call it.
Fantastic. And what was your synopsis? What was the theme that you put on for DevLearn? Like what was it about podcasting for productivity that compelled you to say, look, the world needs to know this?
Sure. I think one of the things that we miss when we talk about the podcasts is that we think they're all recreational. We think they're all niche. We think they're all about alien abductions in some far off country of some rarefied species that we've never heard of before. Where we fall short is that we failed to identify that this is a platform people are absorbing knowledge in. It's not just about these wonderfully quirky topics. It can be about a process improvement. It can be about, like just today, I interviewed somebody about minimizing no-show visits in a pediatrician's office. So, they're very cross-applicable.
So, okay. So then let's start there. Take us through your process. So are you going through and actively identifying business processes or, things that need to be fixed, in the company that you work for, and then say, hey, look, I could create an episode out of this and do it that way? Or are you randomly creating, are you going out and finding experts and saying, hey, what needs to be fixed? Like what's your process for putting all that together?
Yeah, sure. So the process overall, as I presented at DevLearn, was the PRAP process: purpose, resource, audience, promotion. So when you identify those 4 steps in the process, you're able to take a step back and go, aha, this makes sense. This is a need. It's just like when we do needs analysis or gap analysis or anything like that. You have to start with the purpose of it all. Too often, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. I want to start a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay. And, you kind of grin, you go, did you think about what it's going to be for? Sure. Well, I like to, okay. Well, what are you going to do? Oh, I didn't think about that. And there's this long list of didn't think about. And so, getting kind of granular in a process and identifying a need. And like one of the first needs that emerged, the professional podcast that I do is that we didn't really have like a casual vehicle to communicate best practices for the software. And so this worked. And what we did was then we put faces with names and roles from within the company and put them out to our clients. And so the account executive was no longer just the account executive. It was Bob, the account executive, who has a dog, who blah, blah, blah. You know, it kind of put a persona to it. And I think that's what, you know, once you identify that need, you can personalize what can feel like a very technical topic.
Absolutely. And it's instant street cred as well. I mean, it's absolutely instant street cred where that I love that you've humanized Bob or Cheryl or Zaid or whoever it is that, you know, it could be the salesperson, it could be executive or whatever. Yeah. So how willing are the, and since we're talking about, then go to the resources part, right? PRED, right? So how willing are those people to step up and say, hey, look, I'm customer support. You know, I'm in the back office. I don't want a forward facing thing. Like, how willing and what other resources do you need to have in order to make something like this happen?
Let's talk willingness first. Willingness varies for sure. But, you know, one of the stories I like to share when people, you know, do get nervous about it. So I've been doing the podcast game outside of work for about 10 years now with the Coarse podcast, the culinary offering, you know, where I interview folks from Top Chef, from Chopped and all this, and then local culinary standouts who, like, I go to the restaurant, I'm like, that's amazing. I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to tell your story. And there is just as much resistance with them as there is, you know, professionally. Professionally, you can kind of lean on it and go, yeah, but the company kind of wants it. But I always like to share, and this is Bible truth. You can look it up. Up until I was in 10th grade, I had a profound speech impediment to the point where I could not complete a sentence. And in 10th grade, my mother decided to, I was in band up until this point. I should mention that. So music was there. And my mother said, why don't you try out for the school musical, Grease? And I'm just like, are you serious? You want me to like read and say things? That doesn't happen that way. Little did I know, she had corroborated with the director, who was a former speech pathologist, who had this idea that she wanted to try that none of my speech therapists had tried before. I get up on the stage. She hands me the script. It was Grease. The role was Duty. She said, read from page 32. And as expected, I hang up on every interdental fricative consonant, and it's a nightmare. Like, I'm blushing. My friends are like snickering and squirming. And my mom is like, why did I bring him here? She calls cut. She hands me a song sheet, says, I want you to sing from measure 4, cues up the orchestra, and I sing. And every letter pops off my lips, and my eyes go like this. And my friend's eyes go like that. My mom's eyes go like that. And she calls cut, and she says, now, read that just like you sang it. And so if you, insider tip, if anybody watches my foot as I'm about to start a sentence and it starts with a T or a D, you're going to see me tap it off, still to this day at 45.
Wow.
I tell you that to tell you this. This is what I share. And it's the same way when we humanize a guest or humanize a topic, that you can humanize that fear people have of getting in front of people. Don't be afraid of it.
I love it. So so I'm taking you down that path, and it's like, what, you know, you stumbled into, I've been podcasting about a decade myself as well. Why did you start it? Like, was this just something that you're like, wow, it's a cool new channel that I can get out there. This is finally my opportunity to have my own radio show. Like, what was it that, you know, got you started in this format?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't the paycheck. And it certainly wasn't having free time. With that said, though, one of the things, and this speaks to why I started a podcast, it was that there was a need. I said to my wife over dinner one night at our dear friend's restaurant, I said, you ever hear of a food podcast? And at this point, no, like, not really. I went, And I had just connected, because I was a fan of the show, Top Chef, with the chef Dakota Weiss, season 7, Texas, on Facebook of all things. And I said, you know what? I'm going to ask her these questions on air, on a mic. And you ever want to watch me squirm? Make me go back and listen to that one. It's terrible. Sure. But I did it. And I said, okay, cool. That's one episode. I'll ask a couple other friends. 1 became 2, became 5, became 10, became 196 a couple days ago.
Awesome. Congratulations.
So thank you. And it's like, okay, so this is a thing. And so then we started to leverage live shows and benefits and fundraisers for the hungry, the food pantry. And, that's so to get to the origin story, that's where it started. But it started, and interestingly enough, podcasting to humanize e-learning. But it was podcasting to humanize the face and the hands and the story and the soul behind the pass that we never see. We see the front of the house staff. We tend not to see the people creating it with their hands, with their minds, with their souls. And that was the story I wanted to dig down to and really, really touch on.
When you hear the word podcast, or now it's 2020, almost 2023. Is it still audio only, or is the expectation you've found video as well? I mean, does podcast mean, a full scale thing, or is it only audio?
I still hold to the vodcast slice. Some people don't like, yeah, man, that's your thing. Podcast with video, knock yourself out. I know that I am creatively lazy enough that another layer of editing would probably take me out of the game completely. That's me being honest.
Sure. So take me back to, using this in a professional setting now. You've got a purpose behind it. You've got people who are willing to show up. What else do you need in order to get something like this started? Is it mostly a will and a laptop? Or, how much, if I'm listening now and I'm like, this sounds like an interesting idea. I'd love to humanize my staff. I'd love to, bring this to my clients. Like, what do I really need to do this?
It's interesting you asked that, because in the PRAP model that I presented, R is resources. And I played this clip of the movie The Jerk towards the end. Remember when he's getting kicked out of his house and he's got to go, and he says, I don't need you. I don't need anybody. I just need this ball game. And that's all I need. And this ashtray and this and this and this. And so many times that's how people take a run at equipping a podcast. And it's just not the way to go. You can I mean this when I say this. You need about $50 for a good mic. Audacity's free. You probably have a laptop. That's all you need.
And remind people, what's Audacity, just for everybody who doesn't know.
Yep, sorry. Audacity is a free audio editing software. So,
okay.
The peaks and valleys, you want to normalize your audio. You want to trim off the ends. You want to layer in a sound bed, fade it in. You can do that. And again, it's free. It's free. So I implore people, like, look, please do not get crazy with your stuff, because it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And that's why I really encourage it as a professional platform too, because most organizations are looking to save budget, and a podcast is a very low risk, high gain platform for professional learning.
Tell me about like the technical lift that I need to do. Like, I can already sort of see a bunch of people cringing, or hear a bunch of people cringing, as they listen to this, about, I'm going to have to learn a piece of software. I'm going to have to, what is sound quality? How hard was it for you to pick up Audacity? I use ScreenFlow. That's, I'm a Mac user. In your experience, is this something that's like, wow, I got to go get another technical degree for, or how easy is it to use?
No. Audacity is not at all. If you know what a waveform is, and here, I'll teach everybody right now, when you see those lines, those big spiky things, when people are playing with sound, that's a waveform. The higher it is, the louder it is, the lower it is, the softer it is. And go from there. If somebody coughs, you're going to see something go, and then it'll come back in. Oh, that's the cough I want to trim out. Okay, great. And I really don't tend to worry too much about audio editing and really cleaning it up, because I like organic. I like vulnerable. I like natural. I don't feel the need. Like, if your dog barks in the background, I'm going to ask it a question.
Yeah, 100%.
Just to play with it, because that's, again, a little bit of background in improv and that kind of thing. I can play with it. I can dance around. So when people are nervous, I'm like, just relax and let me lead you. Let me take you from point A to point wherever we go. And just don't worry about it. But again, you do want to trim stuff up. You do want to make things happen. I legitimately, 196, the first take, got to the end of it. It's cool. Went to bed, woke up the next morning, played it back. Absolute train wreck. Like, and there was no amount of editing I was going to do that would save it. And so we had to retake it.
So what,
you know,
like, what was it about that? I guess I'm interested that, in that, like, what was it that made it a train wreck? Because again,
it was pity. It was pity. And what I found was that I had a video app running in the background that was like pulling the audio signal in just like in weird pockets. I can't explain it. I probably couldn't reproduce it, but I went, oh, you got to be kidding me. And so, as the host, you got to dip in the humble fund and say, remember that one bottle of hot sauce I was going to send you for being on? I'll send you two. You want to do it again and make it sound like it's our first time ever talking?
So what are you, like, when you're doing, juxtapose for me the difference between, professional podcast and the one that you are doing privately, length of episode, depth of episode, is it, keep it short and sweet? Is it really punchy? I mean, you just said you like the organic format. I do as well. Like, and what about your listenership? Like, what do they want to hear?
It's a really good question. The listenership, all three of them, I think they like what I'm putting out there. That was supposed to be a joke. Ladek's sitting over there going, no, really? He probably only has 3 listeners. No, it's not true. It's not true. But no, so the difference for me is that, I don't necessarily use learning theory when I'm doing course grind, so usually it's just me and a chef or an artisan or somebody super cool hanging out and just talking about food trends we want to see, just get in a bus and go off a cliff, like, bacon everything, or artisan toasts, like, stop, so we easily spend like 10 minutes just thrashing on trends. And it's fun because, like, honestly, I sit there and I wonder, like, am I rooted enough in my opinion to really hate the fact that, like, I love bacon, but my last guest was like, I'm tired of bacon everything. And I went, yeah, dude, me too.
Sure, yeah.
So like, so there's no science there. It's like, it's whatever hits the wall. When it comes to the professional, I do keep it to about a 13 to 17 minute block. And 5 questions tops, and if I see us going long, I will edit on the fly as I go. Again, keeping in mind that pocket of time is short. We want to make sure that we're giving folks what they need, when they need it, where they are, and how they need it.
So how do you, so let's talk about what ultimately becomes what I think is the hugest elephant in the room, which is downloads, right? Do we care if I'm, I guess this, I'm going to let you talk about it, but it circles back to purpose and why are you doing it? Do I care how many people are listening to it? Do I care how many downloads a podcast gets? To, like, what sort of expectation should I have if I'm building a podcast, especially for educational purposes?
Yeah.
About its consumption.
Yeah, I tend to have probably the worst answer you could go to for this, but I'm here and you're stuck with me, so here goes nothing. I have, since day one on Course Grind, been about just kind of the punk rock mentality. Like, I'm making the music, and if you listen to it, cool. And if you don't, there's another bar down the street. Go listen to something else. Like, I've never, I can honestly say I've never really cared about that statistic personally. And professionally, I really feel it's kind of the same way. And here's why. We get so uptight about metrics. We get so uptight about numbers. But here's the thing. You can have 1,000 listens, and so what? Did you change anything? Not necessarily. You can have 30 students in the classroom as a teacher, and if everybody kind of comes in, goes out, you don't know what's changed. But when you see one kid change, when you hear one kid who went to culinary school because of your show, that's the money for me. And so in the same way, like, we could talk metrics, we could talk downloads, but I don't really care. What I care about at the end of the day is change. And if 1 out of 1,000 listeners, let's say, changed the practice because of it and it made their kids healthier, I've done my job.
Does it come back? Have you had a conversation in your company about saying, okay, look, we're going to, put your time and effort behind this, and we need to see some return on it? Or is there a belief in the credibility factor, the, the additional resource for our clients factor, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I think that's really what it comes back to, is that, my podcasts are being repurposed into print format, into blog articles, into that kind of thing. So obviously there's content to it, and content is queen or king. Content runs everything, and content, this is additional content, and there is, definitely organizational faith in the process, in the content, in the integrity of the interview. So much. Prime example, so much so, we just had our new medical director on to talk about type 1 diabetes care, with regards to the electronic medical record. And I come to find out throughout the process of the interview, he's had 3 kids who are now full-grown families of their own, all had type 1 before the EMR was as heavily armed as it was to document such a thing. And he talked about binders, and he talked about all of this. And that was an episode where I stepped back and I went, this is why we're doing this. We're storytellers. We're not, this is not going to, make revenue. We're not going to sell copies or sell merch. No one's going out and buying like a shirt based on this podcast. No. What I'm saying is, though, that the story can connect with our users, with our audience, with people in general. And like, at the end of the day, if we're not doing that, what are we doing?
100%. Yeah. What are the big fails? I mean, you just put on there, you said episode 196, you had to go back and retake it.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you find that what have you learned the most, I guess, over, now you got to tell me as well. So is that an episode a week? Is that episode a month? What is that on the grind?
It's an episode whenever I get to it. I'll be honest.
Okay.
All kidding aside, and this is not to have the moment, but I lost my dad back in May, and that put the rails off it. And it's like, okay, all right, well, and then I got rails back under. I'm like, come on, pick yourself up, let's go. And you get back to it. And, again, with a creative process, I know there are artists and artisans and creators who can really put themselves to a rigid schedule. I can't do it personally. I can't do it personally. Professionally, I'm asked to do it, and therefore I do it. Personally, I can't do it. It's really whenever I get the guest, whenever it strikes me, whenever it feels good. Because,
sure. I mean, that's the definition of a passion project. I mean, that's the beauty of it as well. Like
1,000%.
If you're not delivering if you're not delivering it in the way that you want to, then you lose the passion. This is one of the reasons why I never accept money to play music anymore, because otherwise it becomes a job. Darn it. And you just don't. And it's as weird as it sounds. It's like I don't want a 5th job. So there you go. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But okay. So then take me through some of either the big fails or the biggest lessons, like the evolution of you both professionally and personally in the podcasting that you've done. Like, so another person wouldn't make this mistake, or maybe wouldn't make this choice. What are some of the things that you learned?
Always have a backup plan. Always, because life is unpredictable. Again, not for the all moment, but the morning of May 12th, later in the morning, I had a podcast interview. So, you got to be at the ready, man. No plans matter. At the end of the day, none of it truly is ever etched in stone. You got to be nimble. You got to be able to tap dance. And to that end, even if the mics are hot and the call is live, your kids are going to come in and ask for a snack. Your dog will come beside you and start doing this, so the mic picks it up, and you have this thump thump. My cat is literally going to come and start sniffing my foot for no good reason, almost as if on cue. Stop biting my foot. She's biting my foot. Yeah. So that's the thing. Predictability. No, you have to, as an interviewer, as a professional, and as a performer, call it what it is. You've got to be able to bend with reality and what happens. Don't assume. Do not. Here's a big one. Here's a big one that drives me nuts. when people are in groups like podcast groups or something like that, whether it be in Facebook and whatnot, and they boast, oh, we had 1,000 downloads today. No, they didn't. Don't believe, literally believe. Listen, if you normally believe 10% of what you hear, believe 1% of what you hear in groups like that. Because most of them are self-promoters trying to get you to be like, really? I wonder what's so good. Click. They just got to click. That's what they're doing. Nothing is successful right away. I'm 10 years in and I don't think it's successful. I think it's fun. I think it's educational. And so by educational, is it successful? Sure. But don't assume that you are going to be a hit right out. It's the analogy I give all the time on Coarse Grind. Culinary students expect to have the Food Network show right out of school. You're going to be washing dishes and watching people prep before you're in there, kid. So, it's a learning process. It's a growth process. And it will change. Your concept will change.
Where do you podcast from? So, and again, two different scenarios there for the grind. You go to the restaurant, you set up, and you do it there, or are you doing it virtually, or how are you doing it?
All virtual. I can count on one hand the episodes I've taken live. The stage shows, we set up boom mics to catch the ambient sound, and it was awful for 50. So there's another big mistake. I mean, we have sound from it. It's not great. No, but for the most part, it's a phone call. And if I showed you my rig, you would laugh your face off. It really is. It's my Blue Snowball mic. It's my phone on top of an upside down coffee mug feeding into it. And it's me at my computer desk. I turn about 45 degrees from my workstation to my personal. And there's my studio.
I love it. I mean, I think that's the beauty of this. Like right now, I mean, I've joked more than once that if I took down this office, which is not mine, you'd see a wonderful collection of my wife's clothing. So it's fantastic.
No, dude, I just did Russell Chambers. I think Chambers is his last name. I just did his L&D hot seat, and I had video feed from my studio. Like I came up here to do the professional living room stone.
Yeah, you look super professional, man. This is
like all I need is like the pipe and a smoking jacket right now, right? And I'm everybody's stereotype. But dude, like if I showed you 30 minutes ago what I looked like and where I was, it's all about the show. It's all about what image in this encapsulated episode do we want to convey? If I'm doing a recap of eLearn, I'm hanging out, kind of shooting the stuff and everything. I had all my Coarse Grind kind of gear on. I had this old punk jacket with the safety pinned old t-shirt on it. Like that's my gig. Here, we elevate a little bit. That's not to say I don't self-promote and have my podcast logo sewn into my suit jacket.
Oh, that's awesome. You got to turn that around. You got to like inside out that thing. That's
here, let me see if I can. I'm at my wife's puzzle table. How sad is that right now?
That is awesome. Coarse Grind podcast. I love it.
There you go.
Gotta get some merch. You're gonna get some merch for this thing. What was? I was just gonna. So take me there. So again, for most people who are listening here, they have different purposes, different outcomes, and whatnot. How important is tone for what you're trying to convey? I'm guessing that for your professional one, you're a little less slapsticky, or do you use that as your weapon? Like, do you keep it? Does your personality stay the same, or do you evolve or transform depending on your what your audience is?
It's funny you mentioned that. I just had a conversation with somebody who I had met at eLearn, who they had never met me, I'd never met them. And they said, you strike me as somebody who is the same in every situation you are in, no matter what. I said, yes, hands down, 100%, 1000% even. Like, if I'm on the Office Practicum ones, my humor is my way to self-deprecate, humanize. And again, this is the psychology of acting, psychology of comedy. You self-deprecate to endear yourself to the audience, to not come off as an egotistical schmuck. That's what you do. Same thing's true in the Coarse Grind. I am the unknowing. Now, granted, I've been cooking my whole life. I actually cooked an event with Tony Bourdain's former executive sous chef, who traveled with him on the road for no reservations, who is now like one of my best friends.
Hey, you can call him Tony Bourdain. So I mean, you must have really actually done it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like, I'm in the pocket. I can do the work, right? I understand. I understand the kitchen. With that said, though, I'll be the first in an episode to paint myself the unknowing amateur, because again, you know, what do you get from coming off like you know everything? Nothing. You know, I could roll in here and I could say,
so that at what point that like take me down that hole a little further, because I find that interesting. One of my hard and fast rules is that I have to show up to these conversations as an innocent, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's not a real conversation. If I have a
No.
preconceived idea, if I have too much information, like a Terry Gross, you know, if I'm coming in with my notebook full of like 50 questions, I've read all your book, then it's not a real conversation to me,
No.
right? It's
No.
it's an interview,
Yeah.
which I you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a guided, it's kind of like the antique cars at the amusement park when they're on the track. Like, oh, yay, this is a fun free-form conversation. No, it's not. You're on a track. You're going from point A to point B. Like, relax.
Right.
So yeah, no, I feel it's just, you don't get anywhere with people if you roll into it with already this, well, I know, you know, the difference between fromage blanc and Washasa cheese, you know, to a cheese artisan.
Are those
You know,
things? I don't know.
yeah, it's fromage blanc is a French cheese. Washasa is a Mexican cheese. Cotija is as well. Anyway, I wouldn't bring that up though in a conversation with a cheese maker.
Mhm.
I would say, tell me about it. I grew up and my dad used the individual plastic wrap slices. That's where I came from. Give me what you've got.
All
Because you
right.
don't need to hear my knowledge on the topic. Maybe I'll sprinkle it in. But
So what if again, so let's think about our colleagues who are listening to this right now. Maybe I'm a professor, maybe I'm an L&D professional at a company. You know, zero to my first podcast online. I mean, I pointed at, you know, I put it at about $50. You know, the effort to get somebody to do an interview with you. What else is missing? Like, for example, where are you, you know, what's your syndicate? Where are you hosting? Like, what,
I
after
am,
you've got your episode, what do you do with it?
yeah. So I have a wonderful high school friend who, like, we've been friends like since sixth grade. And he then moved down to Asheville, North Carolina. He was a local cable celebrity doing this kind of like Discordian humor kind of stuff. And early on, before Coarse Grind dropped, he started having me on as kind of like the straight guy, like honestly the Dean Martin to the Jerry Lewis, and I was. And so like that should tell you what kind of parts we play when we engage in things like this. And so, you know, I asked him once. I had the conversation with my wife at the dinner, and he goes, "Oh, well, do you want me to be your producer?" And he's been my producer ever since.
Awesome.
And he's the second highest paid on staff at the Coarse Grind. So I'm at zero and he's at less than zero.
Yeah. Like
And
donating his time every week.
exactly. So he hosts the files on a domain, coursegrindpodcast.com, feeds it into the RSS feed, which then goes out to iTunes, iHeartRadio. There's other places. He's the producer. He's the brains behind it. Me, I'm just the pretty face, which shows you how bad off we are. But for me, then I take the produced episode and I slap a graphic on it and I throw it up to the YouTube channel. That's what I do. And so, you know, if we look at cost, sure, we could do that. We could get it up into the RSS feed and everything. You have to have hosting, you know, and that's a minimal cost. That's not much. But really, if you wanted to be a purist about it, you wouldn't even need to do that. You could just host these things on a YouTube channel for free.
Absolutely.
And, you know, between Facebook, Insta, YouTube, all these different places, you know, I don't know. I don't really want, I'm not a traffic cop. I don't watch the traffic.
Amen to that.
But, you know, I know YouTube's getting, you know, I think I just got something that we just topped 100,000 like views. Like,
Wow. Congratulations.
and I don't care. Sorry, I don't. That's not me being humble. That's not me trying to come off as like, oh, well,
100,000 views, whatever.
yeah.
Nothing.
But it was cool to see. And then like every once in a while, I'll get the top 20 food podcast of 2021 last year, and there I was, ninth in the list, and I'm like, huh, out the other ear.
Well, I'll say congratulations. That's pretty sweet, man. I'd love to be on the top of the list. That's fantastic.
But again, like what is it? Does it have anything to do with why I'm doing it? And I think that's why I find it. I'm like, great, thanks. I'm gonna go talk about why kids should go to culinary school.
Yeah, at the end of the day, though, I mean, you're basically painting the picture of why anyone would do anything, especially as a passion, because if it doesn't feel like work, and you're doing great, and people are resonating with it, and that's the holy grail of fulfillment. That's the holy grail of what you get up every day and it just feels like play.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Now, I'd love for you to get paid for it, and then you just play, and then the money just shows up. See, that's even better.
Although I will say that saying about do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, I am mumbling under my breath what a pain it is every single script I write. So don't think for a second you're just going to be deliriously happy doing it. It's still effort. It's still work. Like it's fine, but it's creative work.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's best kind. When you're building things, it sounds like with the Grind podcast that it's whatever restaurant or whatever theme or topic or whatever you happen to choose, and you just kind of run with it. There hasn't been a collection. There hasn't been a, hey, this is our cheese collection, and we're going to do wines for 10 episodes, and we're going to do sauces for another 10. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I have never really bundled. I will say COVID brought about an interesting twist, because then it was restaurateurs who are losing their stuff, and I started to do like panels of like 4 guests at a time talking about it. And I will say I do have a book in the works, currently on hold, just again because life is heavy, and but it features the locals. So like within a 50-mile radius, it features those chefs. And so, again, we want to start local, and it's basically transcripts of the episodes, so folks can read liner notes with my thoughts on it, and addresses and locations and that kind of thing.
Very cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Do you do, and then so flip it over to the professional podcast that you do. Is there a need to, or a desire to bundle, say, hey, look, here is a bunch of support topics, and here's a bunch of I don't know, forward facing sales stuff. I'm losing my mind is.
No, I get it. Yeah. And again, yes, behavioral health for sure. We're definitely putting a focus there. So a lot of the BH episodes kind of get a little special rub to it.
Awesome.
Definitely.
So
here again, folks, is a moment where we're going to humanize this, because I am on my phone from my living room, and I just got the 10% battery. So I'm going to go off camera for a second, grab the charger, and you're going to pretend it never happened. As you were, Ladek, go ahead.
I love it. Fantastic. He's going to go find a charger. I'm just going to sit here. We'll edit this part out. It'll be fantastic.
Oh, yeah. It's all in the post, right? It's all in the post. Now watch. Now you're going to get a different view. And if we're lucky, we just flip it like this, and we're right back to where we were.
Can we just
call it creativity, kids?
Can we just pause for just a moment and just delight in the fact that you're on your phone, and I have this little laptop that I'm using, and we're having this live conversation. It's literally being broadcast to anybody who wants to listen, which is 0 right now. But isn't that fantastic? Although I think you may have gone on mute somehow. Oh no! You're there.
Okay, cool.
It was just quiet. All right, fantastic. Well, ironically, your 10% battery was perfect, because amazingly we've talked for 40 minutes already. What are you looking forward to in terms of 2023? I mean, how will the podcast continue to evolve? When are you going to get that book done? What are you going to do, in behavioral science and behavioral health? Like what's new, or is it more of the same?
It's a great question. I think, my kind of policy going into 2022 at this point is like, I think I'm just gonna let it ride. Like, and I think too often we get so uptight about plans and planning and everything. 2022 kind of beat me up, took my lunch, and shoved me in my locker. So I'm just gonna kind of let it ride out. Carl Kopp, I'll name drop one and blame drop two, has implanted an idea post eLearn. He came by DemoFest and saw me kind of overviewing everything I was doing with the PRAP model and the professional podcast. And he goes, "Cool. When are you writing your book?" And not the book I was talking about. And I just kind of gave him a look as he walked away and like,
bastard.
But it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. The presentation kind of wrote itself. And, when I went back and I looked at it, I'm like, well, maybe 23 is the year that we start to chip away at this. I don't know. All I know is that, to go back to the first point I made really about, if you're in this, there is no predictability. There are no plans. So, I think I'll just put the energy into keeping the wheels spinning here and now and engaging with cool folks like you and like Russell. And this is why people say, like, you really don't turn down an appearance, do you? I said, no, because I'm in that seat a lot more than I'm in this seat. Sure. And I know what no feels like. And so I will go out of my way to make time and to spread this kind of message about, what is good practice with regards to podcasting and how can we make it better?
Fantastic. Well, Shawn, I can't thank you enough. I think, we can tell people to come over and visit you at the Coarse Grind podcast.
Coarse Grind podcast, Facebook, the Shawn Rosler on Insta, Shawn Rosler on LinkedIn, and CoarseGrindPodcast.com, Coarse Grind Podcast on iTunes, or rather Apple Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio.
Fantastic. I love this conversation. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day in order to be on the eLearn podcast with me here. And I wish you all the best.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for having me, and keep doing what you do. You do it well.
Thanks.